Good afternoon. You're very welcome to Thematic Session 3. We're going to be talking today about facilitating data reuse. My name's Jennifer Baker. I'm a tech policy journalist based in Brussels, and I'll be putting your questions to our great speakers. We have some really knowledgeable people here to talk about all the different ways that data can be reused, but we're really going to focus on the enabling factors of the FAIR principle. So findability, accessibility, interoperability and reuse, and the need for common standards to ensure that that really works in a real world situation, and what we need in terms of data literacy skills and so on. Now, we want your questions because this isn't all about just the speakers. We want to get you, the audience, involved as well. And after each of their presentations, we will be taking questions from the floor. You can do that by going to Slido. Simply go to slido.com or sli.do and use the code data reuse. You will see there on the screen a place where you can put in your Q&A. Please, if you would mind, make your questions concise and clear, and let me know who they are directed at so that we keep it clear between the different speakers. That would be really helpful and make my job a lot easier, as well as ensuring we get to answer as many of your questions as possible in the time allowed. You can also share online on social media. Use the hashtag EUDataViz or the week hashtag, which is EU Open Data Days, to keep the conversation going, get your colleagues involved, and the more people that tune in, the better. With that, I'm not going to delay any longer. I'm going to kick off with our first speaker, who is Ravi Kumar, who's the team leader for the Data Use and Literacy Program at the World Bank's Development Data Group in Washington. Ravi, thank you so much for being here. You're specializing in data-driven, open source and user-centric solutions to improve lives. And I know your presentation is entitled Towards a Data Literate Society That Delivers Them All. It's an extremely laudable aim, trying to encompass everyone, which is a range of diverse groups across society. Tell us a little bit about what you've been working on, what the World Bank is working on. The floor is yours. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. It is great to be here with you all. And I would like to thank the EU Open Data Days team for this opportunity. I'm Ravi Kumar with the World Bank here in Washington, and I serve as the team leader for the Data Use and Literacy Program. Over the next few minutes, and I'm going to request if we can go to the next slide. For the next few minutes, I will talk about the World Bank's Data Use and Literacy Program and emphasize why we need to do more to ensure there are more data literate people within and outside of public sector agencies in every corner of the world, so data can be used and reused to solve problems and improve the lives of people, and especially the poorest. And if you could go to the next slide, please. I will start by providing some context. And the next slide. So let me ask all of us to think for a second. What has the pandemic taught us about the use of data and data literacy? In my view, the unprecedented and tragic COVID-19 pandemic showed us that we need more data, of course, more quality data. We also realized the urgency to strengthen broad capacity and embrace a culture of data access and use to enable the public to understand and combat the virus effectively. We are saying in our communities, in our governments, that we all are using data to track the spread of COVID-19 and its effects. And if we could go to the next slide, we also saw that the COVID-19 crisis demonstrated the consequences of low levels of data literacy and data-informed decisions and communications, including in low and middle-income countries, which has led to confusion among the public, sowed distrust in science and institutions. And in an increasingly data-driven world, and if we could go to the next slide, please. We know that data literacy is a critical skill for many, many reasons, including, for example, It's a critical skill for civic engagement. And according to the OECD, data literacy is one of the core skills needed for public sector innovation. Data literacy increases trust in data, enhances the discourse for policymaking, strengthens accountability, and enables the private sector to innovate. Information and data literacy are also one of the 5 areas of competencies identified in the European Union's DigiComp 2.0, a comprehensive and widely used framework for digital skills. Now, we knew about the importance of data literacy even before the pandemic began. Over the years, the data ecosystem has rapidly evolved from national statistical offices to international government partners to academia, private sector, global firms, and individuals like us are all part of the data ecosystem. And so the need for quality data is greater than ever as countries face unprecedented global challenges. Just to name a few, the pandemic, fragility, refugee crisis, climate change. Of course, these are all challenges in addition to the day-to-day needs for service delivery and governance. So, data must become a shared, useful, and a used resource. And we must create an environment so that it can be used and reused. And this is where, if we could go to the next slide, please, this is where the World Bank's data use and literacy program comes in. Since the better part of the last decade, our program has delivered a range of activities to build capacity for data literacy and data use, enable data-driven decision-making, and democratize participation in the data revolution across low and middle-income countries. And as you will see on the next slide, we have worked in over 30 countries. And in all of our engagements, we support the use and reuse of data. And if we could go to the next slide, please. The program, the World Bank's Data Use and Literacy Program, also supports the operationalization of recommendations from the World Development Report 2021, Data for Better Lives. For example, by enabling the use and reuse of data to create economic and social value for the poor, marginalized, and historically underserved people, we support the recommendations regarding a new social contract for data that delivers to all. And the program also supports equitable access to use data and enable participatory engagement with and support for poor and marginalized people and communities. And finally, by investing in human capital, by providing capacity development among government and non-government groups to use high-quality data, we support the use and reuse of data for public needs and priorities. Data use is a critical component, as you will see on the next slide. The World Bank's statistical performance indicator, SPI, starts with data use, recognizing that statistics have no value unless it's used. There is a strong, positive relationship between the statistical performance indicator overall score and the human capital index indicators and indicators of government effectiveness. So, data use is really, really critical. So now let me, in the next slide, let me briefly talk about how we engage through our programs, what our engagement looks like, and then finally I will talk about share some of the examples. So if we could go to the next slide, please. At the national level, the Data Use and Literacy Program works with officially national statistical offices, line ministries, national and sub-national governments, to enhance their data production, sharing, and use skills. And outside of the government, we work with non-state actors, a diverse group of stakeholders, for example, those in media, civil society, academia, and private sector to enhance their data analysis and use skills. And in the next slide, I'll talk about, for example, our living engagement menu, from a stakeholder mapping to assessing the baseline skill gaps to really working with universities to institutionalize undergraduate and graduate level courses, to developing applications and open data portals. So we work with a range of actors to support a range of activities. And in the next slide, I want to talk about how our programs, our curriculum, can be customized for both data producers and data users. They have been flexibly delivered across regions as a 9-month deep dive program. They've been unpacked also into targeted master classes and boot camps. And of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, deployed as a full-time graduate and undergraduate university courses. All of this, if we could go to the next slide, please. Our program is designed to help foster use and reuse of data to support development across context and regions. And let me just show the next slide, please. Thank you. Really as I said, the program works through diverse stakeholders, both within the government and outside and the private sector, to foster use and reuse of data to support development. And now I'm going to, if we could go to the next slide, I'll talk about, to bring all of this home, I'll talk about some of our country engagements to share how our work really looks like in countries. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Let me start by introducing a young man named Jama Gautam. He's in his 30s. He was one of the participants of the Nepal data literacy program. Although Jama Gautam was hard of hearing, he was able to fully participate in the program by using the data literacy platform that we had developed, and he used that through his laptop, and by working with fellow participants and the World Bank data literacy instructors. You see on the slide one of his tweets, and I'm going to take the liberty to translate that. It's in Nepali. And he mentioned that when he was in high school, he used to have difficulty understanding the math concepts. But now, thanks to the data literacy program organized by the World Bank and with support from the FCDO, Jamak was able to really understand the statistical concepts and make use of data. And I shared his example because it shows how we strive to make our program inclusive. And no matter who you are, where you are from, you are able to learn the basic concepts and the advanced concepts and make use of data to engage in your community and in policy making more effectively. If we could go to the next slide, I'll just share a bit more about what we do with our in countries to support the use and reuse of data. So in Nepal, as part of the data literacy program, we worked with local academic institutions, including a university, to develop undergraduate level courses. Now, over the next 3 to 5 years, we believe over 1,000 students will benefit from the program. And let me also share our example from our West Africa region. If you could go to the next slide, please. In the West Africa region, just in 2020, we work with two national statistical offices in Nigeria and Senegal, work with civic media groups, universities, CSOs, and a group called Wana Data that supports and fosters involvement of women in the digital and data ecosystem. And we know that it is critically important to ensure there is women participation in all of our programs. And so our partner Code for Africa facilitated all of these partnerships. If we could go to the next slide, please. As we have realized over the years that it is also important to ensure sustainability of the program, that we develop public goods to strengthen culture of data use. So for example, through our Nepal program, we developed an open source data portal where we published all of our curriculum and materials for everybody to use and adopt, and reuse in diverse context. And if we could go to the next slide, through our West Africa program, we developed our partner, Code for Africa, developed a series of MOOCs by adapting the World Bank's data literacy curriculum to support learners in the region. Now, in interest of time, if we could go to the next slide, I will very briefly talk about the lessons learned and what we see the opportunities are. Over our engagements over the years in various contexts, what we realize is that a systematic and sustained investment and engagement is needed to build and sustain the data use culture. Now, as the digitization and datafication of the world has been accelerated by the pandemic, there is an urgent and clear need for investments in capacity to use data and strengthen the data use ecosystem. And one of the opportunities we see is that now the World Bank has just launched a global data facility. It's a new World Bank hosted fund to support data and statistics priorities at the global, regional, national, and community levels. And so with the support of the global data facility, we look forward to scaling up our program and help more institutions, organizations, and people become more data literate and strengthen the data ecosystem, particularly in low and middle income countries. And so with more investments, there will be, we very much hope, there will be more data literate people who use data responsibly to advance their own lives and goals of their communities, so we can all more effectively respond to crisis and foster inclusive development. Of course, finally, please also let me share my contact information, and I hope to connect with many of you all and explore opportunities for collaboration. So thank you very much. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Ravi. And indeed, thank you to our audience. We've got quite a few questions coming in. So let me start with the top one at the moment, which is asking, along with the data literacy programs, do you offer any data literacy standardized test or certificate or similar? I know you spoke about the universities, but is there anything else there?
That's a fantastic question. This is something in the pipeline we potentially have been thinking about. That to potentially offer at the moment through our programs when we engage in a particular country, we offer the certificate after the participant has successfully completed the program. We don't have anything virtually at the moment.
Then another question is, are any particular sectors of society, for example, women or ethnic minorities, more excluded from data literacy programs than others? I think probably the answer to that is yes. But then I'm wondering, how could those particular groups be targeted? For example, just thinking if they've got legitimate privacy concerns.
Well, thank you. That's a really, really important question. So what we try to do when we work with our partners in countries is that we really encourage attracting diverse set of candidates. Now, I think there is always more to be done to make the program more inclusive. As I give our example, both from the South Asia region and West Africa region, and the gender, it, the we did our best to ensure there was no gender divide, so there was equal participation. Now, of course, I think, have we been able to reach really marginalized at times um, communities that are digitally even not connected? I think that has been a challenge, and I think that's always a work in progress.
Well, we're very short of time, but there are two other questions, if you can maybe take them together and sort of answer them. One is asking what part of your activities can be applied to public administrations. And Rose is asking, how would we adapt to data visualization culture to enhance real data visualization practices? A big question there.
I think regarding the public administration, of course, there are programs available for both the data producers, usually the traditional actors within the government, and I would welcome our audience to go to worldbank.org/data literacy to check out the resources available. And of course, my email, rkumar17@worldbank.org, and I would be happy to provide more information. And regarding the data visualization, I think it's really key that if there are more people who have these skills and the tools to use data, I think that the society would be everybody would be able to create more data visualizations, if I understood the questions correctly. So the key is really a capacity development. And in the interest of time, let me just pause here.
Well, thank you very much, Ravi. And I will remind our audience that you can continue to engage with our speakers using the functionality on the app via swap card. So do that if we haven't managed to get to all your questions in the time. Ravi, thank you so much for your presentation. I hope you enjoy the presentations of our other speakers, because coming up